In the ancient village of Umwaka, silence was not always a sign of peace. Sometimes, silence meant something was watching, something was waiting. The elders understood this better than anyone else. They had lived long enough to see patterns the younger ones ignored. They knew that not every night was meant for movement, and not every sound was meant to be answered. So they taught the children early. When the wind begins to whisper at midnight, you stay inside. It wasn't just a warning, it was law. Every evening, as the sun dipped behind the tall Iroko trees and shadows stretched across the red earth, a quiet transformation took over the village. Conversation softened, laughter faded. Even the marketplace, usually alive with voices and bargaining, would empty faster than usual because everyone knew midnight was approaching. Mothers would gather their children close, telling them stories not for entertainment, but to keep their minds distracted. Fathers would secure doors and windows, checking them twice, sometimes 3 times. Oil lamps were dimmed, not extinguished, as if total darkness might invite something worse. Even the animals behaved differently. Dogs that usually barked at strangers lay still, their ears twitching at sounds humans couldn't hear. Goats huddled together. Chickens remained silent in their coops. It was as though every living thing in Umwaka shared the same unspoken fear. Because sometimes the wind did more than blow. Sometimes the wind called. Not loudly, not violently, but softly, intimately, like someone who knew you. And once it called your name, you were never supposed to answer. But Adeaze was always different. At 16, she carried a quietness that set her apart. While other girls her age talked endlessly about marriage, festivals, and future dreams, Adeaze often found herself staring at things others overlooked. The way the leaves trembled even without strong wind. The way silence sometimes felt heavier than noise. Her mother worried. "You think too much," she would say, tying her wrapper as she prepared for the evening chores. But Adeaze couldn't help it. There was something about the night that pulled her in. Not fear, but curiosity. Not danger, but familiarity. That night felt different from the beginning. The air was thick, almost like it was holding its breath. Even before darkness fully settled, the village had already withdrawn into itself. Doors shut earlier, conversations ended quicker. And Adeaze noticed. She sat quietly by the small wooden window of their hut, watching as the last traces of daylight disappeared. Her mother had already lain down to sleep, her breathing steady and unaware of the storm building in the unseen world. Then it began. A soft wind, barely noticeable at first, then slightly stronger, moving with purpose, brushing against the walls, slipping through cracks. Adeaze leaned forward slightly, listening. The wind circled, paused, then Adeaze. Her heart stopped. Her name, clear, undeniable, not imagined. Her body froze, every instinct telling her to run, to hide, to pretend she hadn't heard anything. But something deeper, stronger, held her in place. Again, Adeaze. This time, it felt closer, personal, like someone standing just outside the door. Her breath quickened. Every warning she had ever heard echoed in her mind. Do not answer. Do not listen. Do not step outside. But then, something inside her shifted. A strange calm, a feeling she couldn't explain. Slowly, she stood up. Her legs trembled, but not from fear, from anticipation. She walked toward the door, her fingers brushing against the wooden surface. For a moment, she hesitated. The entire weight of tradition, fear, and caution pressed against her chest. Then, she opened it. The night greeted her like something that had been waiting all along. And as the wind wrapped around her, Adeaze unknowingly stepped into a story that had begun long before she was born. The moment Adeaze stepped outside, the world felt wrong in a way she couldn't explain. It wasn't just dark, it was aware. The air seemed to pause around her, as if everything else had stepped back to give space for what was about to happen. The usual sounds of the night, the crickets, the distant rustle of leaves, the occasional movement of animals, were gone, completely. Only the wind remained. It moved slowly at first, brushing against her skin, like a test, like it was confirming something. Then it circled her, tighter this time, lifting strands of her hair, pressing lightly against her arms. Adeaze. She swallowed hard. I can hear you, she whispered. The wind stilled for a brief moment, as though acknowledging her response. Then, I know. Her heart pounded harder. Who are you? She asked, her voice barely steady. The wind shifted again, stronger now, swirling dust around her feet. We have been waiting. The voice wasn't singular. It layered over itself, as if multiple voices were speaking through one breath. Waiting for me? She asked, confused with fear. Yes, the answer came without hesitation. Adeaze's chest tightened. Why me? The wind circled her slowly, deliberately, as if considering how much to reveal. You hear what others cannot. A chill ran through her. That doesn't answer my question. You belong to both worlds. The words landed heavier than she expected. What worlds? She demanded, her voice sharper now. But the wind didn't respond immediately. Instead, it moved closer, closer than before, until she could feel it pressing against her like invisible hands. Then, the living and the forgotten. Her breath caught. What does that mean? She whispered. But before the answer came, the wind stopped. Instantly, as if someone had cut it off. The sudden silence felt louder than the storm itself. Adeaze stood frozen, her mind racing, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Wait, she called out. No response. The night returned to normal, as though nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Adeaze did not sleep that night. Even after she returned inside and shut the door firmly behind her, her body refused to relax. She leaned against the wooden door for a long time, listening, half expecting the wind to return, to call her again, to finish what it had started. But it didn't. That silence unsettled her more than the voice itself, because now she knew something. The wind wasn't random, it wasn't imagination, it had intention. And worse, it knew her. By morning, her mother noticed the change immediately. Adeaze's eyes were heavy, not just from lack of sleep, but from the weight of something she couldn't explain. Did you sleep at all? Her mother asked, stirring the pot of morning porridge. Adeaze hesitated. Yes, she lied. But even as she spoke, her attention drifted, not toward her mother, but toward the faint movement of air passing through the window. It brushed lightly against her face, soft, almost playful. Her heart skipped. "Not now," she whispered under her breath. Her mother turned sharply. "What did you say?" Adiaze blinked, startled. "Nothing." But it had begun. The whispers didn't wait for midnight anymore. They came in fragments, at unexpected moments. When she fetched water by the stream, when she swept the compound, even when she tried to pray. At first, it was faint, barely noticeable, but as the day progressed, it grew clearer. "You must listen." Adiaze dropped the clay pot she was holding. It didn't break, but the sound drew attention. "Careful," one of the women nearby scolded. Adiaze nodded quickly, but her heart was racing. "You must remember." She pressed her hands against her ears. "Stop." But the voice wasn't outside. It was inside. Later that afternoon, while sitting under the shade of a tree with other girls, Adiaze suddenly stood up. "I understand," she said quietly. The girls stared at her. "Understand what?" one of them asked, confused. Adiaze froze. She hadn't realized she had spoken out loud. "Nothing," she said quickly, forcing a smile. But the damage had been done. Eyes followed her differently now. Suspicion had begun. By evening, the whispers had grown stronger, more frequent, more urgent. "They are coming," the words repeated, again and again and again. Adiaze's chest tightened with every repetition. Coming? Who? And why her? That night, she avoided the window, avoided the door. She stayed close to her mother, pretending everything was normal. But deep down, she knew. This was no longer something she could ignore, because whatever had found her was not going to let her go. By the second night, resistance became impossible. Adiaze felt it before the wind even arrived. That same heavy pressure in the air, the same unnatural stillness that seemed to push everything else aside. She stood up before it called her. This time, she didn't hesitate. She stepped outside. "You came," the voice whispered, almost satisfied. Her fear had changed now. It was no longer fear of the unknown. It was fear of what she was beginning to understand. "They won't listen," she said immediately, her voice trembling. "They must." The wind circled her more aggressively this time, lifting dust and dry leaves from the ground. "They are coming." Her throat tightened. "Who?" she demanded. "The forgotten." The words hit her like a sudden drop into cold water. Her mind raced. "What do you mean forgotten?" "The ones abandoned, the ones denied, the ones your people betrayed." Adiaze's knees felt weak. No, that can't be true. But deep down, something stirred. A faint, buried awareness. "You must warn them." "I tried," she cried. "They think I'm mad." The wind roared suddenly, louder than before, almost angry. "A debt must be paid." She covered her ears, but the voice didn't fade. It echoed inside her. "Or everything will fall." Silence followed. Heavy. Final. The next morning, Adiaze didn't wait. She ran, straight to the elders' gathering place. Her heart pounded as she pushed through the small crowd already forming. "You must listen to me," she shouted. The elders turned, surprised. "The spirits are angry. They said we owe them something. We forgot something important." Murmurs spread. Confusion. Then amusement. "Child," one elder said, shaking his head, "you've been listening to too many stories." "No," Adiaze insisted. "They said they are coming." Laughter followed. But it didn't last, because Adiaze didn't stop. Her voice grew louder, more desperate. They said the village will fall. The chief stood up slowly. Silence followed immediately. That is enough, he said firmly. His voice carried authority and irritation. You will not spread fear among our people. Her mother rushed forward, grabbing her arm. I'm sorry, she doesn't know what she's saying. But the chief raised his hand. Take her away. Adaze struggled. I'm telling the truth. But no one listened. Not this time. And just like that, the warning was rejected. The first death came without warning. It was early morning that the village heard a scream. A man, strong, healthy, known for his energy, had collapsed in his compound. By the time people gathered, he was already gone. No illness, no injury, just gone. At first, they called it misfortune, but then it happened again and again. Within 2 days, 3 more men fell the same way. No explanation, no pattern, just sudden death. Fear began to spread like wildfire. What is happening? Is it a curse? The elders tried to remain calm, but their silence betrayed them because they were thinking the same thing. Then came the children. They began waking up in the middle of the night screaming, "They are here!" Parents rushed to their sides. Who? But the children could only point to empty corners. They are standing there, watching. Their voices trembled with real fear, not imagination, not dreams. Something was wrong. And the wind never stopped. It blew during the day. It whispered at night, relentless, unnatural. Adaze sat quietly in her hut, her hands clenched tightly. Her worst fear was becoming reality. They are coming, the voice echoed in her mind again. But now, it was no longer a warning. It was happening. The elders could no longer ignore it. They gathered everyone, and for the first time, they admitted something was wrong. That's when the oldest woman in the village stepped forward. Her voice was weak, but steady. This is not new. Silence fell. She continued. Years ago, the village made a sacred agreement with the ancestors, a promise meant to maintain balance between the living and the spirit world. But something went wrong. The people became afraid, selfish. They broke the promise. We buried the truth, she whispered. We pretended it never happened. Her eyes moved slowly across the crowd. But the spirits never forget. A heavy silence followed, because now everything made sense. They called for Adaze, not with doubt this time, but with fear. You said they spoke to you, the chief said, his voice quieter now. She nodded. What do they want? Adaze hesitated, then spoke. They want what was promised. And what is that? Her voice dropped. A life given willingly. The words hit like thunder. No one spoke. No one moved. Because now the truth was clear. But courage was not. Until I will go, Adaze said. Her mother screamed, No, not my child. But Adaze remained calm. They chose me long ago. Midnight came. The entire village gathered. The wind howled like it had been waiting for this moment. Adaze stood alone at the center. Her mother wept quietly behind her. Adaze, the wind called. She closed her eyes. I am ready. The wind wrapped around her, stronger, lifting her clothes, her hair, her very presence. And then she stepped forward into it and vanished. The wind stopped. The sickness disappeared. The village was saved. But Adaze was gone.
Only her voice remained, carried in the midnight wind, whispering, watching, waiting.